It looks like the money team is actually going to be showing up after all in 2022. There will be COVID-19 protocols for the Busch Light Clash at the Los Angeles Coliseum, and multiple drivers have announced new rides and old rides for 2022. What's going, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to another video. We've got a ton of NASCAR stories here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at all the paint schemes that have been revealed so far in the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those. The first paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Erik Jones's 2022 U.S. Air Force scheme. There was a contest that basically was made about a week or two ago, and it's already been revealed a couple days ago, but this paint scheme, in my opinion, looks absolutely incredible. This is the paint scheme that won the contest, and like I said, we're going to see this, I think, in 3 races in 2022. This paint scheme absolutely looks absolutely excellent, absolutely incredible, and it's a really great tribute to the U.S. Air Force and the Tuskegee Airmen as well. This is a very great paint scheme, to be perfectly honest with you. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Austin Dillon's 2022 True Velocity ammo scheme that we're going to see in multiple races in 2022. This paint scheme looks really good in my opinion. The number of places works very well on this car. I also like the color contrast of the car. I think it looks absolutely excellent, and I think it overall did a really great job on this paint scheme, and I'm looking forward to see this paint scheme out on the racetrack in the 2022 season. I believe this is a good paint scheme they're going to use for the Daytona 500. I think it's a pretty good paint scheme. I like this paint scheme a lot. Next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Corey LaJoie's 2022 Schuler System scheme that we're going to see in 7 races in 2022. This paint scheme it looks pretty good in my opinion. I think the colors work very well. I think they change the color of the number too. Usually it's like an orange number. I think they turn it to a white number, which I think that looks really excellent. I think they did a really great job on the paint scheme, and overall I'm very looking forward to see this paint scheme out on the racetrack in 2022. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Timmy Hill's 2022 unit scheme that we're going to see, I believe, in 7 or 8 races in the Truck Series in 2022. Overall, I think this truck paint scheme looks pretty decent in my opinion. It's not my favorite paint scheme I've ever seen, but I do think it does a pretty good job. Sponsor placement, all that kind of stuff. I think it's overall a pretty decent paint scheme. There are good things about it. There are also not some good things about it, but I think it's an alright paint scheme to be honest with you, and I'm looking forward to see how this car and a paint scheme will do out on a racetrack in 2022. And the final paint scheme we're going to take a look at as of now is Timmy Hill's 2022 Cobol Enterprises scheme that we're going to see in the Xfinity Series opener at Daytona. This paint scheme is pretty cool in my opinion. It's great to see that a new company, I think this is a company that did sponsor MBM Motorsports last year in 2021. So it's great to see that a company that has sponsored a team in the past, they actually are going to be coming back and work with them. So overall, I think it's very excellent. I think it's really amazing, and I'm really happy to see that they are going to be sponsoring 2022. It's really awesome, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Day Chaser. As Day Chaser has signed an associate sponsor deal with Hendrick Motorsports. They will be on Alex Bowman's car, and it's the first anchor alcoholic sponsor for Hendrick Motorsports since 1999, when Budweiser sponsored Hendrick Motorsports, and they were anchor sponsor for the team as well. This is really great, to be honest with you, to have a company like Day Chaser come on and sponsor this team. Again, like I said, I think it's like a canned vodka company or something like that, canned distiller or something. So they're kind of a company I've really never heard of before, but I think it's absolutely awesome that you're going to have a company like Day Chaser coming on and sponsoring Hendrick Motorsports. And like I said, I do think that they're going to be sponsoring Alex Bowman on one of his cars this year, so I think it's absolutely incredible. I think it's actually much bigger than people are making out. I think it's actually a really big deal for sure. So it's really awesome, and I'm happy to see that Day Chaser is going to be sponsored in 2022. I think it's really awesome, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Dale Jr. and Amy Earnhardt, as it was announced on Tuesday morning that they are launching a new brand of 88 proof vodka with Sugarland Shine called High Rock Vodka, which is going to be $17.99 a bottle. I do believe that Sugarland Shine maybe has a partnership deal with Michael Waltrip, so this is not the first NASCAR group that they have sponsored NASCAR driver they've worked with to basically make their own vodka. Now they're working with Dale Jr. and Amy Earnhardt. And let me say this is absolutely awesome and absolutely incredible that they're working with Dale Jr. and Amy Earnhardt. It's going to get a lot of sales. When you see Dale Jr. in a branding, it's absolutely going to bring a lot of sales into it. So I think it's absolutely incredible. I'm very happy about this, and I'm glad to see that Dale Jr. and Amy Earnhardt, they are for sure going to have a new spot. They're going to be having a new vodka here starting this year. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Circuit of the Americas, as there are going to be some updates on the track. Due to motorcycle issues and motorcycles having problems getting across the track, there are going to be some changes to the turns. So they are going to be repaving turns 12 and 16. I think those are the turns that kind of drainage issues last year during the Cup Series race, and they also have had issues, so they're looking to repave just those areas of the track. They're not planning to basically repave the whole racetrack, but they're planning to repave the track due to the irrigation issues around there. And then there's actually another thing they're doing at Circuit of the Americas, as they're actually building a concrete pad to reinforce the areas of turn 2 and 10 to basically have, because I know those concrete pads have kind of been falling apart there. Again, it's been about 10 years since the track has been around. They've never really done much to the track in the last 10 years, so that's why they're working on trying to fix those things up. And I think it's overall is important to kind of fix some of those issues. So overall, it's definitely really, really interesting that they've gone ahead and made some major updates to the track. I think it's really interesting, and those are some of the changes that have been worked on for Circuit of the Americas. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Chris Knight. As Chris Knight announced on Twitter the other day that he is now officially a co-owner for Catch Fence. Now, for those who don't know, Chris Knight has been working with Catch Fence for nearly 20 years, a little over 20 years now, and he's become a co-owner. Chris Knight, in my opinion, is a guy that's been doing like reporting and stuff here on a very, very long time. He's been a guy that's had a lot of insight on the sport for many, many years. Someone that has gotten a lot of respect. And you look at the people, especially in industry, that have given him a ton of the sport. I've seen Vince Welch congratulate him. I've seen Rick Allen congratulate him. And I've seen a lot of people in the industry really, really happy for Chris Knight. And Chris Knight is someone that I've had the privilege to like talk to and stuff, at least in DM stuff. And he's a really, really cool dude to talk to. So overall, I'm really, really happy for Chris that he is a co-owner, basically co-owner of the organization. I thought he was for a long time, but it's cool to see that he's become a co-owner of the organization now. So I think that overall is very, very awesome. I think it's absolutely excellent. I'm really happy and for sure that he has now become a co-owner of the org. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Band Sports. As Band Sports is going to be covering NASCAR in Brazil. Band Sports is, I believe, the top provider for Brazilians in, I'm not sure, you may have to quote between on this, but basically Band Sports, I believe, is when it comes to sports in Brazil, I think it's like the top network. So what this is going to do is it's going to reach Brazilian audiences. You'd be surprised how many people in Brazil are NASCAR fans. I go on Twitter and stuff, and I've seen a lot of people who are from Brazil that are NASCAR fans. I think it's one of the more top countries when it comes to fans of the sport. So I think it's really incredible that they are partnering up with NASCAR, that they're going to be working NASCAR in Brazil. And I think what it will do is it will reach major audiences as well, and not just only grow its presence, but I think what it'll do is it will help NASCAR reach more of a worldwide audience, especially in a country like Brazil, and understanding, and people that basically comment the sport will be able to give a lot of insight overall on it. So I think it's absolutely awesome. I think it's absolutely incredible, and I'm glad to see that Band Sports has become the official provider and the person that will be running the network for that too. So I think it's absolutely awesome, and I'm really happy about that for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Bubba Wallace. Now, Bubba Wallace has been featured in a Twitter marketing campaign that was basically introduced with a lot of athletes, I believe, including Michael Jordan, among other athletes that are part of that. Now, of course, he used a tweet from Bubba Wallace in 2014, which said, "I cannot wait to race in the NASCAR Xfinity Series." Well, time in the Nationwide Series, but he said in the NASCAR Xfinity Series for 2015. That was before a lot of people thought he was going to go to Joe Goods Racing, but eventually he went over to Roush Fenway Racing in 2015 with some limited sponsorship, but he's able to go over there and race in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. But I think it's really cool that they have a guy like Bubba Wallace coming on and working with them in regards to that Twitter campaign, because people are going to see Bubba Wallace and be like, hey, I recognize them, along with all the other athletes stuff and all the superstars that are on that page as well. So I think that's something that's an amazing campaign that they decided to go ahead and do. I think that having campaigns like that are super, super important. I think that's really, really awesome. I'm glad that they decided to bring him along. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Larson. As Kyle Larson is going to be racing in the World of Outlaws race, the opening race of the World of Outlaws late model race at Volusia State Park on January 20th through 22nd, which is actually going to be taking place starting this evening over the next couple days. One thing we know about Kyle Larson is Kyle Larson is known to go out and race in a lot of dirt events and other extracurricular activities. whether it's in a midget car, one of the little Chili Bowl midgets, whether it is a sprint car, or whether it is a late model. Kyle Larson is known to go race on dirt, and he's been actually super, super competitive on dirt. Yes, of course, I think he's going to have pretty big competition in the World of Outlaws late model race. Stuart Friesen, who's really, really good at late models, he's actually going to be competing in this event. But I think a Kyle Larson could be a surprise contender. So I think it's absolutely awesome to see that Kyle Larson is getting involved in racing at that. I think it's absolutely awesome. I think it's really, really great. And I'm glad to see that Kyle Larson is going to be competing in the World of Outlaws season opener. It's going to be great reach for everybody right there. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Don Hawk. As Don Hawk has been named the first official CEO of the SRX heading into the second season of the SRX. For those who don't know, Don Hawk had been working in NASCAR for many, many years, and it was announced early last year that he would be basically leaving NASCAR to go more work in the ground roots of racing and the short track scene of racing. But now he's going to become the official CEO of the SRX. A lot of people had a lot of high praise toward Don Hawk, and I think him being the CEO of this series, I think what it will do is it will help SRX reach bigger audiences because they're looking at having major upgrades in the SRX. There's talk maybe of a longer schedule for the SRX this year. There's talk of more drivers showing up for the SRX this year, among other things that are going to be coming for the SRX in 2022. So I think it's really awesome they've got Don Hawk to work with this. I think having him come on, they've had a lot of major partners that have been working with them over this year, and the SRX is looking to have some massive explosion. I think that the second year for the series could be bigger than the first year, and one of the biggest checkmate moves that they've made so far is making this move. So I think it's absolutely awesome that they've gone ahead and picked him up. I think it's absolutely incredible, and I'm very glad to see that they have picked up Don Hawk to be the CEO of the SRX. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Gary Crotty. As Gary Crotty has been elected to serve as a judge on the FIA Council courts, making him the first NASCAR representative to serve in that role. His term will run through 2025. This is a major deal for NASCAR when it comes to the FIA. The FIA, while they've caused a lot of issues over the last year with how they've handled Formula 1 races, look at some of the ways they've had issues with Formula 1 races. There's talk that Michael Massey may no longer be the director of the FIA when it comes to the races. The FIA, though, picking up Gary Crotty, well, hopefully Gary Crotty will come in due here for the FIA, is he won't come in here and cause major problems for the series. And having him come on the FIA, I think it will hopefully help NASCAR reach a larger and bigger audience. So having him come on, because he's been a legal counsel in NASCAR for many years, so having him come on, I think, could be a massive story all around for everybody. So I'm really happy to see that Gary Crotty has been picked up, and he will be basically serving as a judge in the FIA courts. I think it's awesome. I'm glad to see that he has joined the FIA courts. I think it's really awesome, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Brayton Laster. As Brayton Laster is going to be making his ARCA Series debut at Daytona, driving a 03 for Willie Mullins Racing. Now, this has been something that's been told to me that this was going to happen a few days. I've been getting reports and stuff about that it was most likely this was going to happen. He had tested, I believe, for fast track racing at Daytona and basically been working with Willie Mullins' organization. Willie Mullins, of course, a long-term driver in ARCA, is also team owner, who I believe will also be competing in the season opener for Daytona as well. I'm not sure how much experience Brayton Laster has and how good he's going to be, because again, this equipment isn't amazing, but if he can survive the big one, because honestly, the ARCA Series can have some major big ones, and if he can survive the big one and doesn't run into trouble, he may surprise a lot of people and have a very strong run. But honestly, I'm not entirely sure how he's going to do, just because I'm not sure how much experience Brayton Laster has. That being said, though, if Brayton Laster can come in and do very well, I think it would be really awesome for the series. I think it would be great. It'd be incredible, and hopefully Brayton Laster can do very well. I think it'd be great for the series if Brayton Laster could do very well in the ARCA Series. Hope he runs more races with this team as well. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Justin Haley. As the Justin Haley, as expected, will not be granted for rookie status for 2022 in Cup. Justin Haley will be running technically his second full-time season. Last year, he ran 31 Cup Series races with Fire Motorsports and has 36 Cup Series starts. Now, a lot of people have been questioning that because they don't know what the rookie status rules, and it's basically a case-by-case basis. Well, because of the fact that he basically almost ran a full season last year, almost ran the whole season, he's not eligible for rookie status. So the three drivers that will be competing for the Rookie of the Year honors are going to be Austin Cindric, Todd Gilliland, and Harrison Burton. So it would have been cool to have Justin Haley jump on as a Rookie of the Year contenders. I honestly think that Justin Haley could have given Austin Cindric a run for his money. I know that sounds really like a major hot take, considering Austin is in a Team Penske car, and you've got College Racing, who's definitely not as good as Team Penske. But I think that Justin Haley could have seriously given a run for the money at winning the Rookie of the Year honors. So I think it's definitely interesting they've made the decision. I think it is overall the right call. I don't blame them for not making this call, but it is what it is, and I think that it could have had major negative effects, but honestly, it's a good decision right there, and I'm not mad that they made the decision overall, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Hailie Deegan. As Hailie Deegan was speaking to the media during the performance availability, and she said that she is planning to do 50 races in 2022 in all forms in motorsports. I think that she already had one of her other 50 starts made this year. She did, I believe, compete in the Tulsa Shootout, if I'm not mistaken. And, of course, she's going to be running around 22 to 23 Truck Series races, but there's also talk that she's going to run potentially up to 6 or 7 Xfinity Series starts in 2022. And then she, of course, she'll probably run some dirt races. She may run some, maybe some tries to enter the Knoxville Nationals, among other events. But this is really, really good for her to get experience in other forms of motorsports, because I think having that experience in other forms of motorsports is really going to help her out. Yes, I know that dirt racing is different than the Truck Series, but having experience in other forms of racing and getting behind the wheel and being behind the wheel as much as possible, along maybe some other S or X starts, but having some starts in other respective series, what that will do is it will really, really help her become a much better driver. Yes, of course, like I said, there's different forms of racing, so it's not going to be exactly perfect. But that being said, having her get at least some experience in other respective forms of racing makes a lot of sense, and I hope that she can do very, very well in their starts this year. Again, this year for trucks, she needs to improve a lot more and show a lot more pace, but hopefully she can do that. Hopefully she can do very, very well and get some good runs throughout the year in 2022. So good luck to her, and hopefully she can do great and get as many good finishes as she can in 2022, because I think having her do very well, I think will be really, really great for the series. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about David Reagan. As David Reagan was interviewed by Casey Campbell, a fellow reporter, and basically a fellow reporter who does YouTube videos, but also is a guy who works as a reporter in the industry, he says he does not have a set schedule yet with Rick Ware Racing, and he says he will determine what that set schedule will be after the Daytona weekend. Of course, David Reagan will be returning to the Cup Series once again in 2022. He'll be racing in the Daytona 500 in the 15 car for Rick Ware Racing, and we don't know what his set schedule is going to be. Again, it's unclear how many races he will drive for Rick Ware Racing. It's not known how many races he'll run. I would assume that if Daytona goes very, very well, because honestly, I think David Reagan is actually someone who could be a surprising contender for the overall victory in the Daytona 500 if his car is still in there, because David Reagan is a very, very good super speed racer. And he's good at other types of tracks too, don't get me wrong. Maybe they decided to put him in the car at Richmond because he's historically been really, really good at Richmond. But honestly, I don't really know. That being said, though, I think that David Reagan is someone that could be a really big asset to this team. And again, another big thing that factor will be is what happens of working at Fox this year. And of course, it also happens of working at Ford Performance, because again, he works at Ford Performance as a test driver for the team. So that's another thing that's overall going to be a major, major determination on what he's going to do throughout the 2022 season. So overall, definitely interesting that he, as of right now, does not know what his plans are for the rest of the year, but I think it's important for him to have his plan set long-term here throughout the year. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Chase Elliott. Now, the last couple days, they've been having the media availabilities for basically, it's been Fox production days and media days as well for NASCAR. And there's also been media days for IndyCar, so we've talked about some of those IndyCar reports. But this has been media day, and there's one thing that I think that's gotten a lot of talking points, and it's what Chase Elliott said about the Atlanta Motor Speedway track changes. He says that it makes a whole different ball game running wide open. It could be really, really good at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Now, for those who don't know, of course, Atlanta Motor Speedway has some major, major updates to the track. Pretty much what they've done is reconfigured the racetrack. Basically, not only repaved the track, because let's be for real, Atlanta Motor Speedway absolutely needed a repave. But not only that, they basically have reconfigured the track. I think it's 28 degrees of banking going into the turns, if I'm not mistaken, and it's basically only 3 or 4 degrees less of banking than the Daytona National Speedway. So that's why it's going to be the Super Speedway package for that race. Is going to be 510 horsepower with a 7-inch spoiler for Atlanta Motor Speedway. Now, while I want to overall feel optimistic, and definitely a lot of people are going to be watching that race to see it, there is a lot of skepticism toward the event. Honestly, I'm a little bit skeptical toward it too, because I think what a lot of people think it's going to be is it's going to be a flat-out race where it's going to be basically everyone's going to be punched up together. While I think it is very possible that could happen, I'm honestly not expecting that. I'm very skeptical about that just because of the fact that, of course, it is a 1.5 mile track, and a race is different than a track that's like 2.5 miles. I could see it, of course, it will like work at a track like Auto Club. I think it absolutely work at a track like Auto Club. But a track like Atlanta Motor Speedway, I just don't know if it's going to work. And it's going to be very, very dangerous, too, with how close everybody's going to be. Because, of course, they still have the D-shaped oval. They should have honestly just made it like a flat oval. It would have made a lot more sense. But sometimes NASCAR does not make the right decisions. And I understand what Chase is saying. He says it can be a very successful, but honestly, I have to be very, very skeptical of that just because we haven't seen it race fully. I know we've had basically pack runs and stuff, and drivers have had their own opinions on it, but it's not going to be absolutely perfect in what NASCAR overall wants. So I think it's overall very, very interesting as a whole that is what's going on with that. And Chase Elliott, he's not wrong with what he said, but at the same time, he's kind of wrong with what he says. Honestly, I expect it probably to be a little bit of a crazy fest, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Josh Bilicki. Now, Josh Bilicki on Monday had an interview with Casey Campbell. We talked about Casey just a second ago, had his interview with David Reagan. But Josh Bilicki had his interview with Casey Campbell, and he says he will run about 25 races for Spire Motorsports in 2022. His first race we know is going to be at Auto Club. His paint scheme is actually getting revealed later this evening. But he will basically be driving 25 races for this team in 2022. It says more plans are to be announced in the next couple of weeks. Like I said, Josh Bilicki will be in the 77 car for Spire Motorsports in 2022. Most likely, Landon Castle will be in that car. We know that Landon Castle is going to be in that car for the Busch Clash. We're also expecting Landon Castle to be in that car for the Daytona 500 and probably many of the other races that Josh is not going to be running in. So Josh Bilicki, in my opinion, absolutely, this is a really, really great opportunity for him. I wish that he was full-time with this team, but unfortunately, due to the circumstances, he is not full-time with this team in 2022 because, again, I don't think he had enough sponsorship to go through the whole entire season. That being said, though, I think having him in the NASCAR Cup Series, racing with the Beach McLeod, racing with Spire Motorsports, I think is really, really great. And I think he's going to have his best opportunity to run up front because throughout the year last year, they were really, really improving. Corey LaJoie, for a lot of that race in the 7 car, I know it's different than the 77 car, but having him race in that 7 car last year, he performed extremely well, and especially later in the year, and they were really showing that improvement that a lot of people thought they were going to have at the beginning of the year, but they were showing major, major signs of improvement throughout the 2022 season. So overall, I'm very, very happy to see that he's going to be with the team next year. I wish he was running 4 races for the team, but it is what it is, and hopefully he can do very well this year, and more plans are to be announced. I would say maybe he'll drive some Xfinity Series races, maybe somehow work with racing on a part-time basis, because honestly, anything is possible at this point, but he'll have at least 25 races with the Beach McLeod Motorsports, the Spire Motorsports Group in 2022. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Team Haysbert. As Team Haysbert is going to be testing the next-gen car on January 25th and 26th at Phoenix International Raceway. And Larice Hazen has confirmed that he will be the driver in this car for this test. This is honestly a little bit shocking because honestly we all thought they were only going to run the Daytona 500, and of course we all thought they were only going to run the road courses, Larice Hazeman's, but it looks like they're going to run a lot more races than we initially thought. There's a couple theories behind this. Number one, they may actually have enough inventory to run more than they originally thought. Maybe they have a couple chassis now instead of only having one chassis. But I know that there's been talk maybe they were going to run, maybe run select few races on the short tracks here, which tells me that they're going to run more races. But honestly, I think it's cool to see that they're going to run more races than we initially thought. The fact that they are testing at Phoenix tells me, like I said, they're going to run more races than we initially thought. So overall, I'm very, very happy to see that the Team Haysbert is going to run more. Of course, a lot of people thought, well, Jacques Villeneuve, he's going to run more races. Jacques is expected to run more races than just the Daytona 500. We know that Jacques is going to be in the car for the Daytona 500 this year. But having Team Haysbert come back this year, I think is absolutely excellent. I think it's absolutely incredible. And like I mentioned, I'm very happy overall that Team Haysburg's is going to be showing up in more races this year. I think having them be in the series a lot more than they are currently, I think is really, really excellent. And I think it's great to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Noah Gragson. As Noah Gragson revealed on Sirius and NASCAR Radio earlier this morning that he will have his first Cup Series race at Kaulig Racing, will be at Atlanta Motor Speedway on Sunday, March 20th. So I believe the 5th or 6th race of the year will be Noah Gragson's first start with Kaulig Racing. We already know some of the schedule for Cobol Racing in the Cup Series. AJ Allmendinger will be in the car for the Busch Clash. I forgot to talk about that. But he will be in the car for the Busch Clash. Will be his first start. While nothing has been confirmed for the second race for the Daytona 500, it's expected that Daniel Hemrick will probably most likely be in that 16 car for the Daytona 500 since he has been testing at Daytona in the Super Speedway package. But, of course, you know that both AJ and Daniel most likely will have 12 starts this year, and Noah will have the bulk of the races with 14 races this year. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. But Noah Gragson, of course, getting into the ride. I think it's really excellent to see that Noah is going to be in this ride and making his debut at Atlanta. And it's going to be very surprising to see what Kaulig Racing does throughout the season, because of course, we don't really know what their set schedule is going to be throughout this year. That being said, though, it's very awesome to see that we're going to see these three drivers. Of course, these drivers are three of the final four drivers from the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2021. Of course, Austin, of course, the other driver made the Final Four, who almost won the championship, is racing full-time with Team Penske in the NASCAR Cup Series. So overall, I think it's really, really awesome. I'm glad to see that Noah Gragson will make his debut at Atlanta Motor Speedway. I would assume that they will have a set schedule. Noah might run all the Super Speedway races outside if he doesn't run any more starts for the Beer Motorsports Group than he already has. So overall, I think it's very, very excellent. I'm glad to see that Noah Gragson will be making his debut in the Cup. Well, technically, unless he, of course, doesn't make the 500, could technically be making his debut in the Cup Series if he doesn't make Daytona 500. But I think he's easily going to make the 500 this year. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about all the open teams that are going to be showing up. One of the teams you see on your screen, we'll get into here later in the episode. But right now, there are potentially 5 open entries that are going to be showing up for the Daytona 500. Of course, you know that Team Haysburg showing up for the 500 with Jacques Villeneuve. Of course, we know that we're going to see Timmy Hill and NBM Motorsports and Noah Gragson in the 62. Of course, you have the other team that we'll get into, like I said, later in the episode. But also brought up NY Racing, who is looking to, of course, race. We've talked about NY Racing on this channel so much over the last few weeks because NY Racing has been getting brought up into the equation of them potentially showing up for the Daytona 500 in 2022 and other races. They do have an next-gen chassis, and there have been drivers that have been rumored, in theory, that could get into this ride. I had said Ryan Newman could be a potential driver who gets in this ride just because Ryan Newman does not really have any set plans for this year, but of course, we talked about this earlier in the week on Monday. Ryan Newman right now has no set plans to race in NASCAR in 2022, at least on the Cup Series side or in NASCAR's top 3 divisions. He could, of course, maybe make a one-off start throughout 2022 season, but he's not a favorite. We also talked last year about Johnny Sauter being a favorite, maybe getting this right, but Johnny Sauter, we don't even know what's going on with Johnny Sauter. He's probably not even going back to Floor Sport this year. If you look at the production day photos, he wasn't even at the production days over the last couple days for the Truck Series. So the 2 drivers that I think are most likely the favorites getting this ride, of course, are Roger Carruth and maybe JJ Yeley. JJ Yeley has a lasting relationship with this team. And then, of course, Roger Carruth, his name has apparently been brought up somewhat into the equation as someone who could get an NY Racing ride. If I'm NY Racing, if Ryan Newman was available, I'd go for him. But if you're NY Racing, you got to go with JJ Yeley. JJ Yeley is someone who has had a lot of experience with this team, who's driven for this team in the past. So if I'm overall NY Racing and I'm looking to enter into Daytona 500, look at JJ Yeley, someone who can get it done on the Super Speedway track. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens in regards if he does show up, and they do show up, because it looks like they're more than likely now than not going to be showing up for the 500. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to that, but looks like that we may see just potentially only one entry go home for the Daytona 500. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Sieg. As Kyle Sieg will be racing in the Xfinity Series in 2022, driving the number 28 car on a part-time basis for RSS Racing. Kyle Sieg, of course, is the younger brother of Ryan Sieg, and Kyle Sieg has raced in the NASCAR, was raced in the ARCA series for the last year or two, has actually had some pretty decent runs in ARCA, considering the equipment he's in. He's actually done pretty good in the ARCA series, had some top 5s, I believe, some top 10s throughout the last couple of years, and I think it's really cool to see that Kyle Sieg is actually going to be racing in the Xfinity Series. I think he's a pretty talented driver, and I don't know how many starts he's making. I don't think they gave the set number of starts that he's going to run. I'm not sure if this is going to be a second RSS car, maybe a third RSS car, because I know that RSS was planning to do 2 cars, so I'm wondering if they're going to be fluctuating numbers between 28 or 38, or if this is just going to be an extra third car that they're going to run on a part-time basis. But I think that this is really, really cool to see. Kyle Sieg is actually making some select starts with this team in 2022. I think that overall this is a massive, massive pickup for the team. Have Kyle come onto their team. Having both of the brothers race together is really, really awesome. I think Kyle's a very young and very great driver, and I'm happy to see that we're going to see Kyle Sieg race in Xfinity. I think it's really, really great. Ultimately for Kyle is just to gain some, the goal for him is to just try to gain as much experience as possible, since he's not going to be running full-time, is just to gain as much experience as possible, because eventually I think they're going to want to bring him up full-time in like 2023, even 2024, because I think that they want to keep him in the family team for years, and I think Kyle's got an aspiration, of course, of racing in the Cup Series one day, and this is just a stepping stone to get in some experience in the Xfinity Series. Ultimately, he's got to try to finish in the top 20 at point, maybe top 20s, get maybe like 1 or 2 top 20s to show that you've got something capable of. But for him, just gaining as much experience as possible. So overall, I'm very happy to see that Kyle Sieg is going to Xfinity. I think he absolutely deserves it. I don't think he made an Xfinity Series start last year. I may be wrong on that, but I don't remember if he may have made 1 or 2 Xfinity Series starts last year and had some decent runs with the RSS group, but hopefully he can do very, very well, especially with upgrades coming to RSS Racing, because they are getting, I think, some major upgrades with SHR next year. So overall, very, very exciting. I'm glad to see that Kyle Sieg will be making his some NASCAR Xfinity Series starts in 2022. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Matt Mills. As Matt Mills will be returning to Beach McLeod Motorsports on a full-time basis in 2022, driving the number 5 car. This is not surprising. Matt Mills has been a driver at Beach McLeod Motorsports, I believe, this will be his 6th year with Beach McLeod Motorsports, which means he's been driving with this team since 2017. And I think Matt Mills over the years has gotten better and better in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. His stats have improved. I know that last year did not go amazing for Matt Mills in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. There was a lot of electrical issues. He was involved in multiple wrecks. But I think Matt Mills does have quite a bit of talent. And having a return to the NASCAR Xfinity Series is actually, I think, a really, really good decision for him. I think having him come back is really, really great. And hopefully he can do really well next year. Ultimately, in 2022, he's going to have to learn he's going to have to do a little bit better. I want to see a little bit more progression and improve for him. I want to see some top 20s a little bit. I know that that's a lot of high expectations for Beach McLeod Motorsports to have him perform amazing, but they're getting Josh Williams on the team, and he's going to have to keep up with guys like Stephen Parsons and Josh Williams. So I do think, though, that it's great to see that Matt Mills is coming back. And what does this mean overall for Beach McLeod Motorsports? Well, it means now that they're probably going to have 4 cars in 2022. Because remember, Josh Williams is going to be full-time in his team in the number 78 car. Stephen Parsons is going to be, I believe, in the 99 car. And now they're going to have Matt Mills returning to the 5. And you have to remember that Nick Sanchez is expected to make some part-time starts with the team as well. So I would presume that they're going to have a 4th car. Whether that car is full-time or not, that is being undetermined at this point. But overall, back to Matt Mills, I think this is a great pickup for the team to have him come back to the team. I know some people will be not as interested in having him come back to the team, but I think it's overall awesome. I'm really happy for him, and I'm glad to see that Matt Mills is going to be returning to the NASCAR Xfinity Series with this team in 2022. Good luck to him, because he's going to need it, so hopefully he can do very well with this team in 2022 in the Xfinity Series. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Ryan Vargas. Ryan Vargas was announced yesterday, as expected, that he will be officially returning to JD Motorsports in 2022. Number was not officially confirmed, but he'll be back full-time with this team in 2022. And it is expected, though, that he will most likely drive the 6th car for this team in 2022. I am so, so happy for Ryan, because Ryan Vargas is someone I've been a really, really big fan of for the last couple of years. Yes, I know that last year in 2021 did not go very, very well. But let's be honest here, the whole team in general, JD Motorsports, absolutely struggled. There was really no performance overall with JD Motorsports. Their team absolutely had a lot of struggles when it came to speeds in their cars. And there was a lot of problems with that team last year. And one thing I've mentioned multiple times when it comes to JD Motorsports is one of the biggest issues is they had too much, they were forcing people to work in so many different directions last year that to me, they need to downsize this year down to 3 cars. So I think that, of course, you're going to see Bailey Curry come back to the team this year. Bailey Curry, I think, is a major pickup, and he can be someone that can really help out, can really help Ryan Vargas, kind of coach him a little bit and help him improve throughout the year. Because Ryan Vargas last year definitely had moments of feeling down. I remember last year when he cried at Pocono because, of course, unfortunately, his engineer passed away. But in other issues, unfortunately, hit him, and he had a really fast car, and they had issues. And a lot of people will say Ryan Vargas is not a talented driver, but Ryan is a very talented driver. He's got a lot of potential and knows how to get it done. For me, Ryan needs to show a little bit more improvement going into 2022. I want to see Ryan do a little bit better. And hopefully, and I think that having another year to run full time, and hopefully they can put him in the car in the road courses too. I know that he made a lot of decisions to not race in the road courses last year. I think that he was one who made the major decisions for that. But I want to see him run the whole entire season. Don't want him to see him out of road courses. I want to see him get a lot of experience. Because I want to see Ryan do very, very well. I want to see some top 15s, some top 20s this year. Not a lot, because again, JD Motorsports is an amazing team. And I think Bailey's going to be better next year than Ryan. I'm just going to be honest right there. But I think that hopefully Ryan can come in his team next year, and he can do again next year and run full-time and prove. And I do think that having another year in Xfinity, I think having that year, and especially if practice qualifying comebacks, I think along with a lot of other drivers, I think that's been a contributing factor to a ton of driver struggles throughout the last couple of years. So I am, though, very happy for Ryan. I think a lot of people I've seen are very, very happy. He's got a really good social media personality. He's great personality on social media and does a lot of great things. He's gotten sponsors to work with them. He's been able to bring some other sponsors back on a number, like Best Buy has come on and sponsored him points, and TikTok has come on and sponsored him at points. I think that's something that is absolutely awesome, absolutely incredible, and I'm very, very overall happy to see that Ryan Vargas is coming back full-time. Ultimately, the goal for Ryan, get as much experience as possible, do really well, and hopefully Ryan can do really well in the NASCAR Xfinity Series once again in 2022. So I think he can do very, very well. I think it's going to be overall awesome and amazing for the sport going into 2022. So hopefully Ryan can do very well, man. If you watch this video, I'm wishing you the best luck, man, and good luck in 2022. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the first of 2 major stories in today's episode, as we're talking about the Busch Light Clash. Now, this is a story that I've really not seen a lot of people cover on their YouTube channels. I've not seen a lot of people cover. But for the Busch Light Clash, people are going to have to provide a proof of vaccination to get an event. If you're 5 years older, you'll have to provide a proof of vaccination or a negative COVID-19 test. Now, I believe that is a 2-day PCR test for a negative test, or it's like a 1-day antigen body test. You will have to provide that to get into the event. The reason that I don't think this really has been announced, and it's not been talked about, is it's unclear and drivers and crews will be required. Now, this should not really surprise anybody in regards to this, because we're in California, and California is one of the biggest hit areas when it comes to COVID-19. And when it comes to COVID-19 restrictions, that is not a surprise to me that is an issue. It does not surprise me that they basically are requiring people to wear masks. And that's another thing too. Masks are going to be required at all times. I think unless you're sitting down, unless you're eating food or sitting down, you will be required to wear a mask. If you're walking around, you will be required to wear a mask. And I'm not sure if any other tracks are going to enforce this. I think most NASCAR tracks are not going to enforce these rules. I would expect like Daytona, they're going to basically be fully open. I would expect like other tracks, probably maybe in Gateway, probably even though it's in Illinois, that probably will be fully open and stuff. And probably other states, especially in the South, will probably not require as much. I mean, most states do say it's recommended, but you don't have to wear them. And it doesn't surprise me either, considering there had been a recent resurgence of COVID-19 with the Omicron variant, though. I will say that we're starting to finally see those numbers kind of go down. And we are a few weeks from the Clash, of course, and we're also seeing a lot of people like get vaccines and all that stuff. But this does not surprise me in regards to the LA Clash. I would also expect for Auto Club as well that track most likely also require vaccinations, even though probably the COVID numbers are going to go down by that point. It's not till late. I don't think it's till late February. We're probably still going to see pretty high numbers in regards to that. So overall, I think it makes a lot of sense considering we're in California. I don't expect a lot of other areas to do it. I mean, I've got my own opinions on COVID-19, but it is very important that they are doing this. I think it makes a lot of sense. You don't want to get a lot of people sick, and you don't want to see drivers get infected. Now, I would, like I said, would presume that drivers are probably not going to be required to wear them. I don't think that drivers will be required to wear them. They'll probably be similar to Sonoma, where they'll probably have to wear the mask and probably have to social distance stuff. And probably reporters most likely won't be allowed inside the garage access unless, of course, they're wearing a mask. I don't know if reporters will be allowed to have inside garage access. I would think at Daytona, they're going to be allowed to have inside garage access at that point. But I don't think for the Busch Clash here in a couple weeks, we're going to see as much inside access from the media and stuff. We might see it, of course, maybe like we'll see some Zoom meetings and all that stuff, but that's something that again, I was very surprised that not a lot of people have been covering this story, but of course it's LA County guidelines. But I know a lot of people also have been really concerned about the fact that they thought they were going to cancel the event. The track is basically complete at this point, and we're only 17 days away. They're not going to move the Busch Clash, especially since this close. If they were going to move the Busch Clash to another area of the country like Daytona, they would have already, at this point, announced it already happening. So overall, I think that this story kind of needed to be talked about a little bit, and I think it's interesting that they are requiring it. This may be something that, as the year progresses, something that could come up at other racetracks, like in Vargas. Let's say if you don't know, that race isn't until the mid to later August. So overall, very interesting for sure that the Busch Light Clash, as of right now, they're going to be requiring this, and nothing will be changing in regards to those COVID guidelines. And now we're going to go ahead and jump onto the final major story of today's episode, as we are talking about the Money Team. This is a team that we've talked about on this channel really since late 2018, early 2019, or I think late 2019. About them, we've been waiting for them for nearly 3 years, and we thought, are they ever going to show up? Well, it looks like that they actually might be finally showing up in 2022. That's right. David Land first reported this. He basically made a hunch that basically said that Casgrall and the Money Team, and then a lot of people like myself were really, really skeptical of that tweet because Casgrall tends to like a lot of stuff. Well, Adam Stern got wind of this, and he reported yesterday that the longest-aspiring NASCAR team affiliated with Floyd Mayweather, the Money Team, is working to finalize a deal to enter next month's Daytona 500 as its first race per sources. The team has secured a car, a sponsor, and Casgrall will most likely be the driver of that car. He will be the driver. More has come out in regards to that. Apparently, this team is the ghost of Starcom Racing, and they will be using Hendrick engines. An announcement is possibly next week. And just a little bit ago, Starcom Racing tweeted out that they are going to be that they have an announcement coming very, very soon. When you think about this first, when I saw this, I'm like, Casgrall. Why would Casgrall, whether or not it goes back for someone like Jeffrey Earnhardt? But the more I think about it, with them being the Starcom chassis, the more it makes a lot of sense. I get a lot of people looking at tweets saying, oh, is Starcom Racing coming back? Well, it looks like Starcom Racing is coming back in some essence because they're going to be working with the Money Team Racing as an associate brand. Whether they're going to use the 0 or the 15, I would assume that they will use the 50 because that's how many fights Floyd Mayweather would. I would assume that they would use the 50. Maybe they would use the 0 car, but they would be the 50 team. But like I mentioned, they would be a team that is a Hendrick-aligned team. Again, that means them getting Hendrick engines, which again, all the Chevy teams, of course, use Hendrick ECR combinations, Richard Childress Racing, Hendrick Motorsports, Trackhouse Racing, all the teams at Chevy end up using the Chevy chassis and stuff. So it makes a lot of sense right there overall. But wow, if you would have told me that this was going to happen, that this team was actually going to show up and they would get us to 40, because right now there are only 39 confirmed entries for this year's Daytona 500. I honestly would have laughed at you because it's absolutely such a crazy story. We've been thinking, I know that there have been rumors for a while that they've been talking about maybe showing up with the next-gen car, but honestly, this story it's been such a crazy story for the last few years because we never thought that they were going to show up. They said they were going to show up in 2020 and run some races. They talked about racing in their debut at Homestead of 2019, and they never showed up. And they were talking about racing Agent Allmendinger, and they never showed up. Then they said they were going to race in 2020 for the 500, and then they said they were waiting for the next-gen car. Well, it looks like they're going to show up, and they're going to get us to the 40-car entry field again. Announcement is expected to come some point next week, probably before the next-gen test, I presume, because remember, you've got the next-gen test that is coming up very, very soon. But wow, and honestly, them having Hendrick engines too, not to mention, I think is really, really big at the same time as well. And having what's so insane and crazy is the fact that they're not only going to have you're not only going to have Pitbull and Michael Jordan be team owners, but now you're possibly going to have Floyd Mayweather, one of the greatest boxers in the world. I know somewhat of his reputation has been hindered by the situation of Logan Paul, because apparently he's not paid Logan Paul the money that basically he was owed after the fight. Because remember, they drew in that fight, and nobody won in the fight unless someone basically put a knockout. No one was going to win by TKO, so basically they drew. And Floyd Mayweather basically got no loss, even though Jake Paul said he got a loss. Basically, there was no feud right there. But that being said, though, having a personality of Floyd Mayweather being associated, I know there's also been talk that maybe he had not even been associated with the money team and their own branding and stuff with other people that are working in the team, but apparently now he's associated with the team. It's been crazy, but wow, the fact that they actually are likely going to show up is absolutely nuts and absolutely crazy. If you'd have told me a lot of stuff was going to happen in the sport has happened the last years, I think I would have laughed at you. This is absolutely crazy that the money team actually is going to show up. And of course, as of right now, it's definitely interesting is will they make the Daytona 500 this year? That's one thing that we don't know right now is will they be able to qualify for the 500? If they've got Hendrick Engines, they've got a really, really good chance. And Kaz Grala is a really, really good super speedway racer. Kaz Grala knows how to get it done on super speedway races. He's done really, really great on super speedway tracks. He's done really, really good, has had a lot of pace on those races. So he's someone that I think ultimately is going to be able to have a good chance of making the 500, which will probably take out a team like NY Racing if them getting limited or Team Hasberg. But this team, I think, will 100%. I think that they actually are going to show up. The fact that we have a driver associated with them, because again, we had no driver associated with the money team. The fact that we now officially have a driver associated with the money team tells me, yes, they're going to show up for the 500. So overall, I think that it's really, really awesome that they actually are likely going to show up. I think it's great for the sport, too, to have someone like Floyd Mayweather come in and work in the sport and stuff. And Starcom most likely associate them. I think people saying that Starcom is coming back as like an own team. Don't get your hopes up. Starcom Racing is not coming back. They're most likely going to be associated with the money team. And that announcement is expected at some point to come next week. So we'll have to wait and see and wait for more details come out about that. But it looks like the money team is actually going to be showing up in 2022. So, anyway, that is today's long NASCAR news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe to the channel, notifications to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on page as well. Links go below for that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. Do you think that they actually are going to show up in 2022, or do you think that we're still wrong and they're not actually going to show up, and you think an announcement is not coming? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about the COVID-19 restrictions for the LA Clash? Let me know in the comments below. I've got a few special products that are on the way. Tomorrow, most likely, you will see the NASCAR Xfinity Series driver lineup that has all been confirmed so far. Many entries are getting announced, and most of the major entries have been officially finalized for 2022. So we'll have to wait and see if more get announced there. But you're going to start seeing the trucks and Xfinity Series prediction videos, well, the lineup videos, and may see an IndyCar driver lineup video coming very soon. Keep an eye on the channel as I've got some stuff that is on the way. But anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great and awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.